Did you guys spot the giant castle-sized Doctor Doom Easter egg that's been hiding in the Loki series? That's right, the Citadel at the end of time was originally Dr. Victor Von Doom's castle that was then taken from him when He Who Remains won the multiversal war, and we will be seeing that castle again in Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. So all of that stuff with Loki and Kang, it wasn't the beginning of this story, it was the end, and I can prove it. Hey everybody, Colton here, and in the 2015 Avengers Secret Wars comics, we see Doctor Doom create Battle World, a collection of fragments from variant realities conglomerated into one existence similar to that of the Void, which we saw in Loki and in Deadpool and Wolverine. Now, in the comics, in Battle World, following the destruction of the entire multiverse, Doctor Doom becomes God Emperor Doom, and he sits on a throne with a tree, like Loki, and that throne with a tree is within a castle, like He Who Remains Citadel at the end of time. And remember, Loki's throne and He Who Remains throne both exist in the same place outside of time, adjacent to the Void. And again, the Void will be the MCU's version of Battle World. Now, why do I say that? Well, Battle World is a collection of people, artifacts, and land from dead realities thrown into one place. And what is the Void if not a collection of people, artifacts, and land from dead realities thrown into one place? So as you all know, I've been on a mission to find all of the Doctor Doom Easter eggs that Kevin Feige and company have been planting in the MCU, starting all the way back in Avengers Endgame and throughout this multiverse saga. Remember, despite Avengers Doomsday once being Avengers the Kang Dynasty and focusing on Kang instead of Doctor Doom, Doom was always going to show up in Avengers Secret Wars. And for more than 20 years, Kevin Feige has wanted Robert Downey Jr. to play Doctor Doom. Back during the casting for the very first Tim Story Fantastic Four, RDJ was in the running to play Doom.
You had all met with him already for like Doctor Doom or something. I think he had come through on a maybe
Right.
Fantastic Four.
Right.
But due to him still being somewhat blacklisted in Hollywood, he lost out on the role. But it was for the best, because a few years later, he was cast as Tony Stark Iron Man, something that probably would have never happened had he played Doom just a few years prior. So, while many like to claim that Marvel casting RDJ as Doom for Avengers Doomsday was a last-minute Hail Mary following a decline in interest in the MCU, Jonathan Majors Kang being dropped from the story, they're wrong. RDJ playing Doctor Doom is something Kevin Feige has had in mind for years, and the Russo brothers, the directors of Doomsday and Secret Wars, they confirmed in an interview that Kevin Feige and RDJ had been kicking this idea around for a long time. So while yes, there was totally a pivot from Kang to Doom, and Doom is coming in earlier than they had planned, he was always part of the plan. And that is the reason there are so many clues, hints, and Easter eggs in Avengers Endgame and many in the multiverse saga, like the series Loki, that tease not only the presence of Doctor Doom, but RDJ's Doctor Doom specifically. In season 1 of Loki, we see for the first time the Citadel at the end of time, a castle resting on a piece of asteroid floating at the center of the sacred timeline universe, Universe 616, and this asteroid and Citadel exist outside of the bounds of time. Now, in the comics, the character of He Who Remains also has a citadel that rests on a shard of an asteroid, just like we got in the MCU. But the citadel itself that we got in the MCU looks nothing like the citadel from the comics. In fact, it looks far more like the various renditions of Doctor Doom's Latvian castle, the same castle that we would see him build in Secret Wars. But look, the Citadel looking like Doom's castle is not the only piece of evidence that it was once Doom's and will once again be Doom's when we see him build it in Doomsday. Let me explain. In Loki Season 2, we saw Loki take the throne that was residing in the same place where the Citadel once stood, but for the most part, the Citadel has withered away. Now, when dealing with a place that exists outside of time, it gets a little confusing. Existing outside of time essentially means that there really is no before or after. There's no cause and effect. It just always is or isn't. The Citadel in this floating piece of rock it sits on, this is the center of the MCU. It's the bedrock of that reality and all of its timelines. Remember in that episode of What If where we see Doctor Strange's entire universe die and collapse in on itself with Doctor Strange at its center until the bitter end? Well, there we also see that he is floating on a rock and now encased in this remaining glassy barrier of his universe. The same barrier that exists between all universes and the same barrier that we can see surrounding the sacred timeline and the Citadel. Now, I tell you all of this to explain that when this universe does come to an end in Avengers Doomsday, which it totally will, all that will remain of the MCU is the center of the MCU, the center of the universe, just like with Strange. And that center is that asteroid where Loki is sitting. Now, Loki's allowance for this universe to expand and time to flow freely, giving the universe free will, that has allowed for this sacred timeline to expand and have branching timelines instead of parallel timelines that obey a very strict storyline. And with this expansion, we are seeing the MCU 616 join the wider multiverse and come back into view of the Council of Kangs. Whereas before, He Who Remains had Universe 616 and its timelines secluded.
Once I isolated our timeline, all I have to do is manage the flow of time and prevent any further branches.
And that's why in the post-credit scene of Quantumania, when they talk about him, the exiled one, being dead, they're not talking about Kang, they're talking about He Who Remains, and how that universe is now conjoining with their multiverse.
They're beginning to touch the multiverse.
So anyway, in Doomsday, we're likely going to learn that Doctor Doom has been rip-roaring through the multiverse, and maybe he killed the Council of Kangs who oversaw most of the multiverse. But when Doom reaches Loki's universe, Loki's throne, and dethrones him and takes the reins of the MCU, he will destroy the entirety of the multiverse and crash land its remaining remnants into the void, where he will rule as God Emperor. And there, from the same place as He Who Remains and the same place as Loki, where they both once sat, we will see Doom sit in his newly built castle. And in his castle will be his tree, just like in the comics. Now, here's where it gets fun and also confusing. If this all happens in Avengers Doomsday, then why the hell would we see the Citadel, the castle in Loki with He Who Remains, if all of that was supposed to have happened before Doomsday? Well, that's the thing, and it goes back to what we previously discussed. There is no before. Remember, this place exists outside of time. There's no before, no after, it just is.
This is time. Endless looped time.
In an Ouroboros of reoccurring events happening again and again and again, this multiversal war that we've heard He Who Remains speak of, it already happened, perhaps countless times. Perhaps it's always happening. And He Who Remains Citadel is merely a castle that he stole from Doom when he ascended to power. We then see Loki destroy it, and then Doom builds it again. And these three may have been eternally fighting over this center of the universe and control of existence, perhaps since the very dawn of time. But those are just my thoughts and theories. Now, speaking of this recurring fight between Kang, Loki, and Doom, we know that in Doomsday we are going to be seeing Doom take his throne and probably kill a lot of people along the way. But who? Well, that was a topic from our mailbag show, Ask Colton, and I'd like to share that clip with you now. Michael writes, "Hey Colton, in the comics, Doctor Doom rips Thanos' skeleton out to show how powerful he is. But for the MCU, do you think a recreation of that will have the same impact? Or is it more devastating in a showing of Doom's power if we see him pull out Steve Rogers' skeleton? And maybe that's why Chris Evans being in Doomsday is not yet confirmed." All right. Thank you so much for that question. So in that light show teaser for Avengers Doomsday, we got a blink and you'll miss it glimpse of Doctor Doom ripping out someone's spine, just like we saw God Emperor Doom do to Thanos in the comics. This panel in the comics, it was meant to show readers just how powerful this version of Doom had become and how outgunned the Marvel heroes would be going up against this Doom. Now, this Doom, of course, being the version of Doom that we meet in Secret Wars, and very likely the version of Doom that we'll be getting in Avengers Secret Wars with RDJ, and maybe even in Doomsday. So, the light show teaser featuring Doom ripping out somebody's spine, perhaps the spine of Thanos, that suggests that we will be seeing that happen, I think, in the first act of Doomsday, maybe even like the first 5 or 10 minutes. Because, and I talked about this in a video I did over on Screen Crush, if they were showing us anything other, because if they were showing us things that happened in the movie, things like that, and there were things that happen like toward the end of the movie or in the middle of the movie, that's a pretty massive spoiler. But what we do know is when things happen like at the very beginning of the film, those are the things that they tend to be more comfortable sharing with us beforehand, before the movie actually comes out, and filling the marketing with those moments. So, anyway, in that light show teaser for Doomsday, what did we see? We saw Doom coming through the same green rift that Loki walked through to go sit on his throne. So we know Doom is coming for Loki. And then in that light show, we also see Doom taking a throne, taking a seat on a throne. So we can assume that he takes Loki's throne and he begins to control the tree. And it was also in that little light show tease that we got that glimpse of him ripping out somebody's skeleton. And if we're to believe that that scene is likely going to be featured in the opening minutes of Doomsday, the purpose of that scene would be to establish Doom as this nearly unstoppable character, just like they did with Thanos in Infinity War. And in that opening scene of Infinity War, it was Thanos who we saw beat the hell out of the Hulk really easily, thus setting up Thanos as this really powerful guy. General audiences know that Thanos is, like, in a lot of ways, even more powerful and dense than the Hulk. So Thanos would be a great character to see RDJ's Doom encounter, maybe in like a variant timeline or whatever, and have that same confrontation from the comics and rip his skeleton out and perfectly mirror the opening of Infinity War and show us just how powerful Doctor Doom is. Now, if they don't go with Thanos, which I think they probably should, I think there's a lot of poetic nature to having it be Thanos, and it's RDJ. I think there's a lot there. But if it's not Thanos, who could it be? Our questioner suggests Steve Rogers, and damn, I don't think so. That would be brutal, but no, I really don't think that we see Doom rip out Steve Rogers' spine. Nobody wants to see that. I think Steve Rogers, has a pretty big role in both Doomsday and Secret Wars, and I don't think we're going to see him die. Uh, Okay, maybe we'll see him die, but I don't think like that, and I don't think we'll see him die until Secret Wars. But I think it really will be Thanos. I think we could see Doom like strolling through the multiverse, like killing several heavy hitters and just establishing like, oh, he's on a war path, and Thanos would just be like one of many standing in his way. And another group that could be standing in his way is the Council of Kangs. So we could see Doom like portal into that arena and just completely obliterate every single Kang in existence. That would not only clean up the, where are the Kangs question, but it would also show Doom just be like this unmatched threat about to go up against all these heroes and set us up for, the audience needing to understand, oh, the Avengers, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, they're all going to have to come together if they want a chance at beating Doom. All right. Thank you so much for that question. Next. Hey everybody, Colton here, and this is the mailbag style show where I take your questions about Marvel, Star Wars, DC, movies and streaming in general. Whatever you want to ask, send it in to the email address askcoltonnow@gmail.com, link in the description below. And hey, maybe you'll see your question featured right here on the show.